Sexton trying to get loose. He'll fire. Hey! Knocks it down. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland upstairs. Oh! Sexton inside. A thunderous dunk. And Allen blocked the shot at the rim.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs Media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. I have lost all confidence in my Milwaukee Bucks pick. That has gone completely out the window, but my confidence for the Cleveland Cavaliers, my confidence for the Cleveland Cavaliers is still intact long-term. So that's a good sign. With me today is my condescending co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing?
Oh, he was so confident, everybody. Oh, but he couldn't believe I had Nets in 5. Continuity over talent. Who is this? What show is this? Is this a Hawks? Is this a Hawks 2016 podcast here?
The worst part is this is the second time I've made this mistake. I picked the Hawks in 2015 over the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Somehow befuddling Justin yet again. Talent always wins, my friend.
You might be right. You know, in the end, talent will always win out, and that's why I will be victorious over you in the long run, Carter. Not on this issue, but in the end, I'll be victorious. But this podcast is not about us. Today, we welcome back one of my genuine friends in this industry, one of my favorite people to podcast with, not just a friend of the podcast, but a friend of us from The Athletic, Dave DuFour. How you doing, buddy?
Fantastic, actually.
That's good.
Legitimately.
Can you just roast your boy
Actually,
Justin?
No, I'm awesome. Oh,
wow.
Can I roast him? Now, look, I said Bucks in 5. So I should probably just be quiet here.
Man.
Look, I didn't expect him to come out and play.
Team, you must have thought that Heat team was better than it was.
Well, no, actually. I just thought this Bucks team was better than this. And I honestly, I really thought that it was Bud proof. And
I thought so too.
Never is, my friend.
Turned out to be the great folly in my logic is that turns out no team is Bud proof. It's
okay. I know
there have been a couple of things there. I mean, the Nets are they're hitting everything. I mean, Kevin Durant shooting like 50% on threes, and
that's
all
why
of them
I picked
are
them. They don't miss anything.
Covered. Yeah. So it certainly is feeling like a wrap. And I galaxy brained myself here because again. Yeah, those guys just can't be stopped. So
can I actually ask you? I know this probably isn't Justin's preferred rundown, but I'm curious. Like, do you think it is? Like, do you think it's Bud? Like, because I just thought the talent level was not even in this series.
I mean, look, there's a lot of Giannis attacking still for some reason. Giannis was settling for threes. Like they were running little. Just step up actions for him to walk into threes like with 14 seconds left on the shot clock. I don't know, man. That seems like a coaching decision to me.
Yeah.
There's some weird stuff there. But the other thing is, man, all the Bucks kind of played like babies. And you can't do that in the playoffs.
Can I just tell you?
I mean, they did.
This is exactly why I like having you on the pod. Because ultimately, like, there's all this, like, I feel like NBA Twitter and like, you know, the people around this league, I think they like went too far. Like we saw what old beat writers and columnists used to do, where they just like call a player soft and like be like with no basis, and now we're afraid to call anyone out. And I love that you're just like, yeah, they're playing soft, they're playing like babies.
They are. Brook Lopez is the only guy playing with force, I think, and Giannis, you know, again, the playmaking thing just isn't working. It's too easy to scheme against. And, you know, Chris Middleton missing his first 8 shots, maybe that's not going to happen again, but he missed so many shots that they were out of it by the time he started hitting shots. So you can't have that again. I mean, you're down 0-2. The series is likely over. It's probably done.
Yeah.
And it's too late. Now what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're going to start talking about who the next coach of the Milwaukee Bucks is. Yeah. Because the best thing you can do is play your 5 best players in the way that they play best. And Giannis with the ball in his hands up at the top of the key is a win for the defense every single time, because worst case scenario, you drop back and he's going to drive into you. Best case scenario, he's just going to take that 3 that he's taking so confidently with complete disregard for the outcome of the shot. So yeah, I mean, it just feels like this is not going to happen. And, you know, let's just move on. I'm personally, as soon as the first quarter of game 2 was over, I was like, I'm ready for a sweep. Ready? Let me get to the conference finals.
I was as well, because then it's going to force them to make the necessary changes. I didn't expect to start this off with Bucks talk, but we're here now, so we might as well start here before moving on to other things. I do want to give credit to Brooklyn, though, for the defense. I want to give them credit for the defense that they're playing, because that was the part of this I didn't necessarily expect. I thought, okay, they might be able to outscore them, but Milwaukee's going to get what they want. Giannis is going to attack the rim the way that he did in the regular season, and you're going to see him put up like 40 a game. And like Blake Griffin is playing terrific defense on Giannis. Kyrie, we've seen him step up defensively a bunch. Kevin Durant.
Who could have guessed that? Not Cavs fans, Justin. We've Durant, never seen him flip it on in the postseason and be a decent defender.
I thought the drop off for Kevin Durant after the Achilles injury was that he didn't have that gear defensively anymore. That maybe that'll come back next year, but that's going to take some time. And that's why I felt Brooklyn was going to be a terror next season versus this year. But it turns out he was kind of saving himself a little bit for the playoffs. Like, he is playing legitimately good defense. Like, Claxton's playing well. Like, they as a team are shutting down the Bucks, and that's why they're dominating the series beyond what they're just doing offensively. I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. It's not just the failings of the Bucks, but the failings of the Bucks and the refusal to change and make adjustments is what's made their offense so ineffective.
Well, and also they have Kevin Durant.
Yeah, that helps.
I mean, look, he looks like the best player in the world right now. And I know that that's tough because Jokic is also kind of looking like the best player in the world. But yeah, man, I just don't know that you can beat this Kevin Durant at all. Not in the East. Like, who the hell? I mean, sorry, man, but Philly, you're toast.
Yeah, Philly might be toast against Atlanta. Yeah, I mean, like that's kind of my thing with why I was so surprised that anyone wasn't picking the Nets. Is like, because if they're like, I just maybe I'm just a snob for like elite play, but like I was like, if even Sans Harden's like, this team at their best is better than everybody, and like they're all really pretty good play. Like Sans Harden, really, everyone here has playoff resumes and are very capable players. Joe Harris is barely getting attention as he absolutely cooks the opposition for wide open jumpers. Blake Griffin, who I did not think was cooked, has proven he's not cooked. And like, I'm like, this dude knows how to play basketball. He's got, because like, and the thing with Griffin, in my opinion, that I started to notice even in Detroit when he was dogging it half the time was like, oh, he's a smarter defender than he used to be. He used to be a low IQ defender. And that really, I thought, limited those Clippers team's ceiling on that end of the floor. And when I would watch him in late Clippers and early Pistons before he started completely dogging it, like I was like, oh, this guy kind of figured out how to move. He can switch now. He's really, his footwork is much better. I don't know. I just really liked this team, and I didn't understand why anyone would push in any other direction.
Well, and Blake is strong as hell, right? Yeah. Like, let's not discount that and how important that is in this series, because when he gets stuck on Brook, he's not getting moved as easily as a lot of these other guys. And he can actually wall up on his own against Giannis. We've already seen it a few times, right? Yeah. He has guarded Giannis really, really well, shockingly. I'm not shocked that Milwaukee's having offensive trouble, but I have been really, really surprised by how Blake Griffin is able to stay in front of Giannis completely and just be a big body. He's meeting him chest to chest, and
he sacrificed his body a ton. Yeah. Like it's crazy how much he's sacrificing his body out there. And these playoffs I found to be incredibly enjoyable for many reasons. One, it's nice to have this versus what we had in the bubble. The presence of crowds really does make a big difference. You really feel that in Phoenix. I love the fact that we are having coming out parties for young stars. John Morant really looked great on the stage. Trae Young, everyone in Phoenix is looking terrific. I think Utah is playing like a buzzsaw as well.
That Phoenix game, by the way, I'm sure we'll hit on it later. What a young core statement game! Like, just
that was such a
20-point games across the board. Like, that's the box score that a coach just like falls in love with.
It was a cool. You know what I loved about it was how, Chris Paul really just said, all right, let me finish this. You guys got us there. Let me finish it. And I thought that was really, really cool that they got to use him as a closer. And I think that that's kind of the trick as he's working back from whatever that shoulder thing is. If he can get nice and loose by the end of games, It's gonna be trouble. I think that series might go 7.
I love that series.
It's closer. It's
this
closer
Nuggets
than
team, man. I think they're
tough as hell, man.
I think Jokic is at this level where it doesn't that much matter who else is on the floor. Like, he's so good on offense that just by existing, he guarantees that they're going to look functional on that end, if not good.
They got caught at the end of the third, beginning of the fourth, right? I think it was like the run was like 31-7 or something like that. Just pulling that out of thin air, but something like that. It was that big run. You take that out, and this game is the Nuggets winning. And obviously, that's basketball, right? That's the NBA. It's
take out the run and everything changes.
But with that being said, I think that one run isn't necessarily indicative of like a mismatch. I think it was just, hey, we got hot, and this series may be dictated by who can get hot at the right time.
I missed the beginning of this game, and if you guys are watching on the YouTube stream, I miss Jokic's off the backboard finish. I didn't see that possession.
It's so much.
There are no rules, man.
No,
he's there is no box, right, for him to think outside of, and it's fantastic.
I get such joy from any time I get to like show Jokic to someone that isn't like familiar with the NBA. Like even my wife, like she'll be half paying attention, and anytime like she'll look up and she's like, "What's the deal with that guy?" I'm like, he's going to win MVP, and now he has. Congratulations to Jokic. But man, I wish Jamal Murray was there, because I think they really would have had a shot at a championship.
They would have won the title.
I think they would have won the title too.
Yeah, up here in degenerate Canada, I was placing bets on Denver to make the finals after the trade deadline, because I didn't trust the Lakers' health at all. That ended up being correct.
And also, unlike Philly, who still just gets so mucky, even against defenses they can attack. That's not the problem. Like, Denver, because Jokic is such a cheat code, can outscore anybody on any given night.
So, Dave, I got a question for you. We're talking about the coming out party for all these teams, and I think it's really great. I think you're seeing that in interest around the league as well. Like, I think people are really invested in seeing this. But with all that being said, are we still getting Kevin Durant versus Kawhi in the finals?
God damn it. Probably. I mean, I don't know, man. I think Utah can beat the Clippers. Obviously, Utah's, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
And a lot of this depends on, how's Donovan Mitchell holding up. Mike Conley's out for game 1. That's a big deal.
That's huge.
We saw what happened in game 1 against Memphis. I don't think Utah is going to be nearly as rusty, but they still, they've been off for a few days, and the Clippers just went 7 and have finally actually figured out, crap, we need to play defense to win games. So,
and also, I feel like Utah is one of those teams that they're like that car that needs every single piece to be firing just right.
Yeah.
Or the wheels fall off. Like I feel like because of their top level talent deficiency, because I don't think Donovan Mitchell is an A1 star like some of these other guys. He's no Luka,
right.
Like, because they don't have that top
much like
end,
the Bucks with Dante. Like, without Dante, everyththing falls apart for Milwaukee.
That's why you got messed up.
100%.
That must have been
a good take.
That must have been it. If both teams were fully healthy, then I think the Bucks have this one. James Harden.
Look, Dante DiVincenzo is certainly an upgrade over James Harden.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. If both teams had their druthers, but I do feel like Utah is one of those teams that like. That's why Conley not being as bad as he was at the beginning last year is so important for them, right? So, not having him there, it just, everything seems to muck up a little for them.
Yeah, especially against a switchy defense like the Clippers, right? Like, I think that is going to be a big part of it. Like, I feel like the Clippers coming back from the deficit they did, not having as much time off. Normally, this would be a game that I'd be pretty confident picking Utah. Still probably would. I think they'll step up in the situation, but without Conley, it definitely gets just a little more tricky for them.
Yeah.
Moving on from the up and coming teams to a team that I hope will be in that mix next year, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Dave, I was listening back to the last time you were on the podcast. You were on New Year's Eve 2020, which
that's
really,
right. Wow.
Really wasn't a long time ago. Like, it feels like a really long time ago. And that was right at the beginning of the season. But so much season has been packed into such a short period of time that it feels like forever ago. And a lot of the takes aged really well. We did really well on the podcast. I've been really happy with the previews that we did as I listened back. But I do have some questions about how you feel the Cavs are kind of living up to your expectations and whether or not they are on track, because that seems to be a really large topic right now with Cavs Twitter discussing, hey, yes, we did have individual success from the young core, but that hasn't necessarily translated to team success yet. Right. I guess to ask the question broadly, do you feel like this team is still on the right track, or where are you at when you evaluate the Cavs?
I mean, right now it's obviously a collection of pieces. It's a bunch of assets that, are a little bit nebulous. You don't know how they're all going to fit together. I still don't know if I love the two small guard thing. Mm-hmm. And they were good together, I thought, in spaces. Okay. Yep. You can see where it will work.
Well, and they were certainly better together than anything the Cavs had, which might, might be damning with faint praise, but like that was their best backcourt combo.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's just, how it is with the young teams that don't have a Luka, right? Yep. Like if you don't have Trae Young, if you don't have this high-end talent, it is what it is. That's the piece that's missing here. You've got, I think, Colin Sexton. I mean, look, man, 24 points a game. I don't care how good you think this player is. It is hard to score 24 points a game in the NBA. And he shot 37% from three.
Yeah. So and he did that while increasing his assist to 4.5 a game. Like that's significant.
And I have long been on the corner of Colin Sexton. I think his future in the NBA is going to be 6-man on a very good team. Like I think he could be your best bench player, or at least your primary bench scorer on a good team. He could be Jordan Clarkson in a couple of years.
Which is funny that's not a pejorative anymore.
Yeah, well, but I mean,
he's better than Clarkson, works, right? Let's be clear.
But this is the thing, though, is this is how the league works, right? Like when Clarkson was in the wrong role, we thought one thing about him, and then he gets into the right role, and all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, Jordan Clarkson's pretty good. And now I don't think Colin Sexton's necessarily in the wrong role. It's just that he's on a role in a bad team that he can fill, but on a good team he's definitely not in the same position. But I think overall, I like so many of the pieces, man. I love getting Jared Allen. Like, I think that's a good thing. I love getting rid of Andre Drummond. So you got more Jared Allen out there. I think Okoro showed me a lot this year. And it's, again, another tough season to kind of judge these young guys as well. Condensed schedule. I don't know. It's hard to tell if they're on the right path or not, because you don't know it until you're on it.
Yeah.
So you kind of need to see what they do this year in the draft and how this summer works. I think there's some big roster crunch questions that are probably going to occur.
Yeah, and that was the focus of our last podcast, and I'm glad we kind of got it out of the way, because we've discussed all the context and like every angle of the big questions, like whether or not you do extend Colin Sexton in the summer, what kind of fit concerns do you have? Do you consider trading someone like Larry Nance Jr.? Like all these really icky questions, which honestly, like doing them all back to back to back, which we did on the last podcast, like that doesn't feel fun, because that's not the way that we like to look at basketball, right? Like I would much rather focus on who we have, how they can improve internally, how you can kind of supplement that talent. And that's what we generally do. But it's also important to lay out those arguments, which we did in the last pod. But like, my preference is it clicking with the pieces that they have. I'd love for the core 4 plus Nance and whatever they do this offseason to be enough to take a next like leap where you go from 20 wins to 41 wins without major roster changes, because that would be fun. I would get to be a little more right.
Let me ask you a question. Who's the Julius Randle on this roster?
I think it's Darius. I think he's got to take that leap. I think you look at what he did in April, where it was basically 21-8, just a little bit below that. Mm-hmm. If that's his new baseline and he's that level of assertive, he adds some weight, increases his 3-point rate, which JB Bickerstaff and Kobe Altman have said they want these guys to take more threes. If he does that, I think that elevates everybody. I think that makes things easier for Sexton, and he can focus more on channel more of his energy to rounding out his game, contributing on the defensive end. I think it makes things easier for everybody. I think it's Garland that has to make the leap.
You know what? I think could very easily next season be a 20 point a game, 8 assists a night guy. Very easily. Like, you can see it. But a lot of that is going to be about Sexton and how he works playing off the ball from Garland. And we saw flashes. I thought it went pretty well. You even mentioned the assists going up. Some of that is just being a better secondary guy, making the next pass. And that's been huge, I think, for Sexton. It's hard when you're a ball dominant guard like that to adjust. I think we saw Mike Conley last year. His struggles in Utah were partially because of that. But Garland is just such a better passer and playmaker generally that I think that you've got to commit at the franchise level and say, look, we got to put the ball in his hands. This is our guy. But Colin, we need to know that you're ready to score, but also make the next pass. And I think we saw flashes of that. I
think that he really is starting to learn that. And something that Justin's hammered a lot this year is the best part about Darius's high scoring games where he's really controlling the game as a scorer. The assists go up too. It's not it's not like some of these scorers where they're either pounding the rock and trying to get buckets or they're trying to get the team into their offense. That's why Darius, I think, is really the ceiling raiser, because he doesn't have to give up anything to be great. And that's what great players do, is they by focusing on one part, they don't have to rob Peter to pay Paul. And I do think that is the answer. I think if you had to pick a Julius Randle, that is the one. I don't think that they have a Knicks-like jump in them. I just think it's such an enormous leap that I think
it has to come collectively too. Like Okoro's got to make a leap. Allen needs to make a leap. Garland probably needs to make the biggest leap.
That I think that their Julius Randle might be their power forwards not missing 150 combined games.
Well, wait, which power forwards? Because I suspect one power forward probably is missing all the games for him next year.
Well, obviously we don't know that yet. Like I understand that the Nance conversations are gaining some national traction. I understand that the Love thing seems to be heading towards a divorce, but until I actually see a buyout or a trade, which I don't see a trade coming. So I really do think it's a buyout only. So barring that, I'm assuming both guys are going to be on the roster. And even if it is just Nance, I see Nance, who missed, like, how many did he end up missing, Justin? You know the number because you said it 500 times.
Yeah, well, God, I think it was like 37 missed games. Like the stat 37. The stat I have in my head is Garland, Sexton, Love, and Nance last season missed 24 combined games in 65 games. And then this year they missed 114 combined in 72 games. So that was rough. A lot of that came at the same time, right?
So not having the entire team suffer 47 concussions is their Julius Randle to me, because really they had no continuity. They were playing their 10th, 11th, 12th men a lot this year, and not just because they were sending guys home or not because they were developing the young core, like stuff that tanking teams say when they're really just tanking. Like, they had no bodies for big stretches of the season, and entire position groups were wiped out for key stretches of this season. So I feel like if they're going to take a leap, it's Darius continuing to grow, the young core continuing to grow, but also just like their vets actually getting to contribute. I think that's a huge thing.
A whole season of Jared Allen, man.
Yeah,
that's such a big upgrade.
It's funny because I don't think they're missing box score production. Is I guess my point.
Right.
Like, they've got box score production. They're missing know-how. They're missing winning basketball plays. And when they start making those, then I think the sky's the limit for them.
And the stretches where they were healthy, you saw the 3-point rate go up because that is something they want to do, but they didn't necessarily have the personnel. And you're also fighting the natural tendencies of those young guards. Garland being a first guy that likes to get into the lane, Sexton a slasher, Isaac Okoro being raw. Dave, it's really funny that you mentioned the presence of Jared Allen, because when we did our last podcast, you mentioned, hey, these guys would really benefit from like a high pick and roll partner, but they don't necessarily have that right now. And now they have that. Like the chemistry between Garland and Allen was genuinely terrific. Like it was really, really good. And another offseason of those guys putting on some weight, I think it makes things easier for everybody. Like when you can effectively run a pick and roll and you have a threat there, it opens up so much because it really takes the defense's attention trying to take that play away from them.
Well, and he's so great on the short roll, finding the shooters in the corner and even the guys cutting in the back door. Like it's something he really, really developed while he was in Brooklyn. I mean, it was actually fascinating to watch. You remember he started shooting corner threes at one point. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I just want to see him make that pass on the short roll first. And then they actually wound up doing that. So, I mean, there's so much stuff that he's going to add on the offensive end, but to me, the defensive end is where Jared Allen is going to impact this team the most. And that's so obvious because he's a good rim protector, but the energy that he brings to the defensive end. I mean, when you have a big who's willing to go up and get wrecked occasionally, he's also going to go up and block some dunks. And when you have that kind of rim protector behind you, especially on a young team like this, I mean, that's a good way to get your guys more connected defensively and then turn good defense into good offense. And so I think that, there's an impact there from an energy perspective that is going to be hard to quantify. This is again, like calling a team babies or playing like babies, right? It's going to be something that's hard to quantify, but you already see it with Jared Allen. He brings it out of them already. And I think a full season of that is going to be big for these guys too.
Are you still a believer in JB Bickerstaff? Because that was the other thing that really jumped out was confidence in him. And to his credit, like this was a team that got younger this year. And prior to May, when basically the entire team, like the bottom fell out and guys were out of the lineup, they were middle of the pack defensively. They went from near worst in the league to middle of the pack despite getting younger, which is hard to do. Are you still a believer in JB and kind of what he can be for this team long term?
Yeah, I mean, I love the stability. Obviously, you got a young team, and this guy was with them as an assistant and then stuck around as a head coach. And, I think I even mentioned he keeps taking over these jobs, and it's hard to hang around as a coach. Right. Yeah. And so it was really nice to see him get a head coaching opportunity. But I think he did well. I mean, you mentioned they were middle of the pack defensively. Who the hell on this team should have had them there? Like
Larry Nance, who didn't play half the year.
Yeah. So, I think that, it's not quite a Tom Thibodeau situation where he got max talent out of him, but I think he wrung quite a bit of talent out of,
I think they played hard all year. I do think they played hard all year, and like just playing hard consistently is not something you see a lot of bad teams do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think all the questions with this team really are in the margins, right? Like how much growth are you going to get from the young core? How are you going to surround them? Like what type of players are you going to bring in as a team that really only has the mid-level exception to play with? Now you have your own picks, you have things that you can do to get creative, but there's no obvious answer to add talent there. So it's nice. It's really encouraging that you got a young core that generally makes sense. Like, yeah, maybe Sexton's role may change. Maybe you continue doing what you do now, which is starting him, subbing him out early and letting him run that second unit. As long as those opening 4 or 5 minutes aren't disastrous, like there's no real downside of doing that in my opinion. But it's good to have a young core, stability, a coach that they seem to buy in with. And that's a really good starting point. Do you feel like they're really far away, Dave? Because we had Nekias Duncan on the podcast and he basically felt like if they were healthy, they would have been in the play-in. If Nance in particular was healthy, they would have been in the play-in. I wouldn't go that far just because of the youth and inexperience on this team. Like that's why I was kind of picking mid-20s when I was doing my season preview, because I thought you'd lose close games with that lack of experience. But do you feel like they're kind of at least potentially a threat to be in that play-in mix next season?
I don't think that that's a stretch for them to be in that that 8, 9, 10 range is not out of the question. A lot of it's going to be, I guess what happens ahead of them, right? Like, what does Indiana look like next year? What moves do they make this summer? Toronto obviously has a decision to make. Are they going up or down? Toronto is a big one. Like, would you be shocked if Toronto is just outright tanking next season? I don't know that I would. For 1 year, I think that they could probably make a huge impact in their future. So there's a lot of stuff there. I think a lot of up and down movement that they're going to have to think about, but yeah, they should be competitive for the play-in, but they still are lacking the high-end talent, even that the bottom of the playoff, sort of bracket has. I mean, you look, the 6th seed was Miami, and Boston's the 7th seed with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. I mean, the NBA just has so much talent. The Knicks are out of place, but other than that, man, every other team is kind of loaded. So, I think this year, if they had been healthy, all right, maybe they're ahead of Toronto. Maybe they win 5-6 more games, but I don't think that they're, at the 35 game mark, let's say, and next year, certainly with some growth, you hope, but a lot of it's going to be about what happens to those teams around them. And then can they bring in, I think they need another guy who can really play. Like,
if they win the lotto and they get Cade, Cade makes so much damn sense.
They make the playoffs.
So much damn sense.
If they get Cade Cunningham, they make the playoffs.
Sorry, I need to correct you. When they get Cade, we are speaking this into existence.
It's really important that you respect that.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, because this is very much a Dallas Mavericks with Luka thing, isn't it?
Oh, we're speaking this into existence, man.
Yeah.
The Cavs have been waiting year after year after year. We've been saving. We've been saving
Never
that lottery lot. They've saved their lottery luck the last 3 years, and now it's finally going to pay off. This is when we're cashing in all the chips, because there is a player that makes so much damn sense. He makes so much damn sense with his core, and it would just be a absolutely beautiful fit. So I'm going to keep speaking that into existence, because we are now 2 weeks away, and it is crazy how much is. I think there's talent throughout, like wherever they're going to land. Like I think tier 3 in this draft is really nice, but if you get one of those top tier guys and you don't necessarily have to count on one of the guys internally making that leap, that just makes such a big difference.
Yeah. I think they're going to be improved from this season, which is not a hot take at all. I mean, they should get better, but it's very much going to be, can they get another guy? If it's Cade Cunningham, hey man, enjoy the next 7 years, right? Like it's going to be fun. But if it's not, I think that there are guys out there that could probably help them a little bit. I'm retroactively bummed out about, the KPJ stuff not working out, because you could just see, I mean, even though he's not big enough, really, you could still see where they could have 3 small guards that just score the ball so well,
right,
that it doesn't really matter.
And like, JB Bickerstaff got a lot of criticism for saying, hey, we want KPJ to run the second unit. We almost want him to operate as a point guard. And people thought that was crazy, that if the season would have continued and they did that it was going to be a reflection that they were tanking.
And that was Houston's primary plan down the street.
There was proof of concept. Like that's the thing that I've really liked. And Carter's been on this a lot. The process has been really good. They haven't necessarily had the luck, but the decision-making has made sense. Like
I think they've taken the right risks.
We've talked about this. We've talked about the war chest was empty when LeBron left. It was empty. And this is, by the way, you trade that war chest is to get championships. You got a championship. Great. But it was empty. When he left.
It's funny that you mentioned that because that's been actually a big point of contention lately, because Windhorse recently went off about it on the Low Post. Jason Lloyd just wrote about how they made these decisions in 2018 to not upgrade the roster, try to make one final championship run, but instead prepare themselves for post-LeBron life by, prioritizing that Nets pick. In The Athletic recently.
Pragmatism.
I just don't know if I buy it. And they did try, but there is a degree of you can't shortcut what had to happen here.
Those deadline moves did improve the team. Like, it was unfortunate that Nance hurt his hamstring, Hill hurt his shoulder, like Rodney Hood got hurt, like every single one of those guys. Jordan
also
Clarkson,
unfortunate they were playing the best team in NBA history.
Right. That's the more important thing.
Like it's unfortunate, but I do feel like it's just a little bit of revisionist history. Like I understand where it's coming from, but you also have to be realistic.
That was the stated goal. I'll say that was the stated goal, is we're not going to be left high and dry like we were after decision 1.0. But the reality is, like, it's not like they didn't get good pieces. Colin Sexton's a good piece. I think we should all be happy about having Colin Sexton. If they didn't make the trade they made, Colin Sexton wouldn't be on the roster. Nor would
Larry Nance.
Yeah.
Well, look at just even like smaller pieces. Look at all the second round picks.
Yeah.
That they started collecting. This is the sort, like, the winning on the margins thing is so hard to do. And already, like, you see that this front office is doing a really good job of that. Yeah. Right. Like they have smartly started trying to win the little battles that you have to do when you're a Cleveland and you don't have a guy that happened to be born there. Right. Like, you have got to win those battles on the edges. You got to get those second round picks. You got to have the cap space to be able to insert yourself into some of these multi-team deals, and having young guys like Colin Sexton that other teams might be interested in. Not that they want to trade him, but he is a piece that another team might really value. And maybe that gets a piece that's a little bit more valuable to your team because you've got Darius Garland. So I think that they've done a really good job of not only replenishing the war chest, but inserting themselves into so many of these conversations.
I completely agree. And like, the need to get that guy was what fueled our conversations of, okay, like maybe you do explore those type of trades, which again, like it's icky. It's not something that I enjoy doing because, hey, these are people. And now that we're partnered with the Cavs, like, you're going to potentially talk to these guys. Like, we've had Larry on the podcast. I love Larry. He's done so much for the team. And when you have to discuss the business side of it, that sucks. But at the same time, if you're going to have those conversations, and we said this on the last podcast, you also have to have an understanding when players treat this as a business. Like, you have to honor that their wishes and the fact that they are people. So, I mean, that's just kind of part of it. But moving on, let's talk about a team that has made the leap that the Cavs are hoping to make next year, which is the Atlanta Hawks. The Trae Young discussion is really, really interesting to me. Like, I love that people are either embracing him as a villain or they're having conversations of, we shouldn't make anyone a villain. Like, this isn't the approach. No, I love it. I love that he leans in on it.
Just fix this. Don't do this. This is dumb.
Why can no one on the Hawks do a shush properly? Like, Bogdanovich also was up there. It was
maybe they're saying like, you can pick your friends, you can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friend's nose, right? Like, I don't know, but this finger over I don't know.
This is where his hairline is.
You know what? It's got to be like an adrenaline thing that you just like, you're just thinking, I'm bringing my finger up to my face and you just miss. But I love that Trae Young embraces it. Like, I think that's so much fun. And yes, don't cross the line. Don't do the shitty things some fans are doing. But it's fun to see someone embrace that role. And you know what? Bomani Jones actually pointed this out on recent podcast. The reason he said that he loved it, and it was something that I agree with, but I hadn't really thought of it in this way, is Trae was doing this even when they were losing. Like, this is who Trae Young is. And Colin Sexton does the same thing. Like, it's one of the things I love about Sexton is if he's giving someone the business, it doesn't matter if they're down 20 or up 20, he's going to start doing it, versus someone like Steph Curry, who kind of started leaning in on being the villain and doing the shimmy and whatnot once they were winning and never really did it beforehand. When someone's done that the whole way, it's a much more compelling villain origin story. And I love that emotion being tied into sports as long as it's kept in the proper context.
I love that you were able to, not only boost up Colin Sexton there, onto the same level as Trae Young, but you also managed to diss Steph Curry at the same time. That was art. That was art. But
I might have been doing this for a little while.
Yeah. I love Trae Young. I love the way he embraced, I'm going to battle against you with the fans, because look, man, like, ultimately this is an entertainment product, right? Trae Young's making himself money right now by going at the Knicks. Ask Reggie Miller. you know, how many documentaries have they made about Alex English? I don't know that Alex English was talking enough shit to the Madison Square Garden crowd. Well, Trae Young might get a documentary made about him for this, right? Like, this is great branding. This is great for the sport. It's great for me just because I like that, right? Like, that's fun. That's the stuff that we grew up watching. I grew up watching these guys actually, because basketball is a shit talking sport.
It is.
Please talk your shit. And I wish the NBA would just let them do it. It's fine. These are grown men. They've been doing this their whole lives. Nobody wants to get into a fight on a basketball court. You know why? Hard to shoot jump shots when you break your hands.
It's true.
None of these guys want to fight. Everybody likes money. Everybody likes to be on TV. Let them cook.
Yeah,
it's unsportsmanlike. Like, you know, when let them jaw a little bit. Nobody's fighting. And I love that Trae Young really just went at it. It was amazing. It was awesome. It's great TV. I wish he would go harder against Philly. You know,
I
think he has a healthy respect.
But be careful. I was like, but be careful, because we don't want batteries or anything. But,
no,
you know, it's still Trae Young is awesome.
Are we ready to give Steve Nash credit for saving Trae Young's career?
No,
because this man.
I thought you meant general. I thought you meant generally. I was like, no. Mike D'Antoni. But
no. Let's give Steve Nash credit, because when he threw a fit about Trae Young's foul drawing antics, and he stopped getting those that he was averaging like 18 free throws a game. Now he's up to a normal free throw attempt rate. And I just feel like the stuff that I was seeing when the Hawks were losing, and sure, the roster wasn't there, but I just thought he wasn't playing good basketball. And like
it's ugly.
He was playing selfish basketball, and I think he is playing such better team ball, even though he's still dominating the ball. But like, I just see a winning player. I see the player that I thought we might see when he was at Oklahoma and just had no talent around him during that electric year. And like, I just feel like he is. I don't know when the switch flipped for him, but I do think, you know, villainy stuff aside, he's actually just playing better basketball than we've ever seen him play.
I mean, Nate McMillan was a big. I think that
turns out he's a good coach,
right? What have I been saying? Yeah. Nate McMillan, I think, was a big one.
Dave, me and you have the same basketball philosophy. We love Nate McMillan.
Yeah.
We love Danny Green.
Yeah. I like people who are good at their jobs. I mean, you know, sue me. But I think, speaking of good at your jobs, the Atlanta Hawks front office did a really good job, right? Like, they put their money where their mouth was.
And I didn't think
they
did.
had Trae Young.
Justin and I deserve L's, because we did not like their offseason at all.
You guys weren't with me and said that they could be the 4th or 5th seed if everything went right?
Nope.
Oh,
no,
weird. What's that like?
Oh.
So my take on this was that I wanted one of Bogdanovich or Gallinari, because I really like their young core. I wanted Kam Reddish to keep getting those reps.
Well, you only got one. Hold on. You only got one of those guys, though. Right, because Gallinari just got paid. He didn't do anything all year.
That's a good point.
that is a very good point.
Yeah.
I was actually going to mention that I think part of the shift for Trae Young too. Yeah, a little less of the insurance fraud and the foul drawing and whatnot, but also Bogdanovich coming back to the lineup. Like, he was out the beginning of the year, and getting that secondary ball handler, someone that can take some of that pressure off of him. I really think it makes a more balanced attack. Like, I think that's something
probably use.
Yeah, well, the Bucks could really use him. And honestly, like, I thought that was the role that Josh Richardson was going to play in Dallas as well. Like, someone that could handle a little bit of the ball handling responsibilities and make it less of that heliocentric offense, which I think should be a goal for Dallas as they move forward.
For anyone who has a heliocentric offense, because it doesn't work.
Yes. But I think that has also been a big part of changing how the Atlanta Hawks play, and just getting a more balanced field, because I really like this team. Like, I really like their drafting. I think Okongwu's really going to develop. The fact that they won that last game without DeAndre Hunter, who has really stepped up this year, is big. Kam Reddish, not a good offensive player at all right now, but a very tenacious defender. I'm not ready to even
say that, though, because I thought he showed the end of, like, I thought the second half, he started to show some stuff. Once he figured out he could spin around without falling on his face, it really clicked for him. And the shooting started to come around. But this season was rough.
He's a tremendous defender, though.
Right?
He is a tremendous defender.
Yeah.
So, like, there's a lot of guys there. And even Kevin Huerter, like, that's one of the things is
crazy in game one.
As they've had injuries, these guys are stepping up, and that's a really, really admirable spot. Like, they've done a tremendous job there in Atlanta, and I think they deserve a lot of credit. And I know that, yeah, the Cavs can't do it the same way as the Hawks because they don't have the cap space to go out and sign a Gallinari, but maybe you get creative with the sign and trade. Maybe you find some ways to supplement that talent and you see a similar leap. Maybe Dylan Windler is finally healthy next year and he becomes a bit of a contributor for them. Like there's so many different ways for this team to improve internally. Isaiah Hartenstein, like I really like him as a backup big behind Jared Allen.
Don't make that face.
You're making a face, Dave. Harden dimes, baby. He's got the
Heart Foundation.
He's stolen everything from Jokic. He's learned everything, man.
And how long was he there?
Half a year.
Yeah, you know,
a team that desperately needed a backup big.
He's a quick learner.
He actually, all jokes aside, Dave, he actually was very, very good for the Cavs in a way that I don't think
he was.
Yeah, I don't think either of us expected him to be. I thought we were getting a minutes filler, and then it's like, oh, well, I wouldn't mind keeping this guy around.
He's interesting enough. Like the thing that I like is that he is another big that plays well in the pick and roll. So you can have
out of the rotation in Denver. They gave up pick compensation for him.
I mean, you got the MVP, right? Like, so what do you need? 5 minutes a game?
That's the thing is Jokic is going to play 43 minutes a game.
And you can't play them together.
And
by the way, Jokic is a better defender than JaVale McGee.
Yeah, he definitely is. He definitely is. And it was funny because I remember being our Discord will roast me for this because I was like, "What? I can't believe they're running Hartenstein as their backup 5 this year. Like this is supposed to be a finals contender." And then like we get to the playoffs and like, "Oh yeah, he plays 43 minutes a game. It doesn't matter." It's like, "Oh yeah, whoops." No one bats 100%.
You know what?
Right.
Getting 3 second-round picks over the course of a year for JaVale McGee, 1 for taking him on from the Lakers and 2 from Denver, in addition to Hartenstein, like that is still that's one of those moves in the margins, right? Like that makes such a big difference. I think Kobe said that it was 3 first-round picks and 13 second-round picks they've got in the last couple of years. Like they've been aggressive in finding those kind of opportunities out there, and then some of the internal guys as well, like Dean Wade played really well this year. Lamar Stevens showed a little bit of something. Broderick Thomas has shown a bit, although I'm not really counting him as part of the future. But speaking of giving credit, I do want to give some credit to Ty Lue, because I really do think that he did a tremendous job against the Mavericks, having the confidence. Like the thing with Ty is he is not afraid to make any move. And like, I think that's something that the Bucks would benefit from, like benching Patrick Beverley because we just can't play him, keeping Luke Kennard ready, and then he contributes in Game 7. Like I think that's a thing that not a lot of coaches have the cachet to pull that off. And it shows that he has the respect of the locker room, that there isn't any backlash when one of those moves is made. I really think beyond what he does as a tactician, because I think he's a really smart coach. You look at the out of timeout plays and the way that they make adjustments. I think he's tremendous at that. But the way that he gets everyone to buy in on those changes, I think is really admirable.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know how I feel about Ty Lue. I've talked about him many, many times on this podcast over the years. And I think his game-to-game adjustments are better than anybody. But the thing that I love the most is that he's willing to make adjustments at halftime, between the quarter break. You know what I mean? Like he just will, hey, look, this isn't working. Let's move on. It's not just running, headfirst into a wall over and over and over again and hoping that Giannis figures it out. I'm sorry. Little slip there. I think that's why they won that series. They attacked more. They saw, okay, we've got openings here. And it certainly helped that they started hitting shots and playing more like they're, like they did in the regular season. But yeah, Ty Lue, man, it's great to have a steadying hand, especially when you've got 2 stars. And that's something that's hard to learn for a lot of coaches. And I think former players probably have a leg up on it. I mean, we're seeing that with Steve Nash in Brooklyn. You got to let your guys go. Brad Stevens, I didn't think was good at that in Boston. Tatum sort of forced his hand at a point where they basically only had Tatum, but far too often I feel like good coaches don't hold their best players back, and Ty Lue is never going to do that. Now you may not be able to lift them up necessarily because the players still have to play the games, and I just think coaching is a little bit overrated when it comes night to night like that.
Mm-hmm. But especially in the regular season where there's really no time to prep, and especially this year where there was no practice time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And game 1s in the playoffs are weird too, right? Because you're just trying to predict what curveball is coming first, right?
Yeah.
Like what is coming first. I'm trying to guess You've been trying to guess what I'm doing. And this is where I think when you see teams like Utah, they come out game one, nothing is different for them against Memphis. That now not great, right? But still, I think that there's a little bit of smart strategy there. I think the Clippers are pretty good about just we're going to try our game plan, hope it works, and then we'll change it if we need to, which is also good. That series is going to rule, man. It's going to be awesome.
Before we get you out of here, what is your prediction for that series?
Clippers in 7.
Clippers in 7.
Yeah, Clippers in 7, and that's tough because I've watched every single Utah game this year, and that team is so good, but they just don't have Kawhi and they don't have Paul George. And as we know in the playoffs, man, like it's hard to bet against guys.
Are we counting? Right? Are we counting Paul George as a positive?
All right, but Kawhi. All right, we got Kawhi. It's hard to bet against Kawhi.
Here's my thing. Here's why I think you got to pick the Clippers here. Kawhi couldn't stop Luka. He can stop Donnie Mitchell.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's that simple.
I don't even think
sometimes.
He's going to really guard Donovan Mitchell all that much, right?
Like
they're going to do the soft switching.
But what I'm saying is, if it's not cutting time, Donovan Mitchell is not getting a good shot off on Kawhi.
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell's not going to be guarded by Jamal Murray. In the playoff series, right? Like you're not going to see the shit that we saw last year in the bubble.
No,
it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and especially if Mike Conley is out or he's not himself, it's going to be pretty tough. Like Mitchell's going to have to step up in a big way, which he has in the past, but this would require something we haven't really seen from him. So I'm really intrigued by that series. We want to get you out of here. We value your time, and we
we got a game on.
We value you, Dave. You're a beauty. Thank you so much for your coming on with us. Is there anything that you want to plug before we wrap this thing up?
No, I'm awful at plugging stuff. Everybody knows where I'm at. Please come check it out. There's a lot of good stuff at The Athletic, so definitely go and check that out.
And follow him on Twitter at Dave DuFour NBA. That's probably the best way to keep up with what you got going on. Dave, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate our listeners as well. If you are watching live on YouTube right now, make sure you like and subscribe because it's the best way to help us show up in the algorithms. If you're listening on podcast, make sure to leave a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of the Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, you can send a screenshot of that review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there, and until next time, go Cavs.